Hi, my name is Emma Tapp. I am a meteorology student at Valparaiso University. Today I'm going to be diving a little bit deeper into the data centers that are making their way into Northwest Indiana, particularly New Carlisle, Indiana. I'm about 30 minutes from there, so this is affecting my community and it's been in the news a lot recently, so I thought it would be interesting to do a deeper dive into this. First of all, just starting off with a little fun fact here. Did you know that data centers can use as much energy as a small city? And when I say small city, I'm talking about 50,000 people or so. So one data center is using the same amount of energy as 50,000 people. So we're going to start with some frequently asked questions. If I get through these and you have any other questions, feel free to leave them down below. So just starting out, what are data centers? I wasn't super familiar with this concept to begin with until I did some more research, so I thought this was a good place to start. They're basically ginormous buildings that are just full of very powerful computers, and these computers run 24/7. And they store, process, distribute data, anything you do on your phone, online, on your computer, on your iPad. If you're sending emails, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're looking something up with an AI, even just sending a text, you are using data that comes from these data centers. So on the inside, they just look like anything you would associate with computers, server racks, lots and lots of cables. They have large cooling systems, which we will look more in depth into later, and then large generators as well, because they need to keep these running 24/7. So why are we just not hearing about them? Why are they growing? Because reliance on digital technology is increasing. You don't meet anyone without a phone anymore. Everyone has a laptop. A lot of jobs are moving online. The growth of AI is large right now. Um, and all of these use data from data centers. So we've had to continue building and putting in these data centers to help keep up with the demand as technology is growing and increasing. So just how big are they? These large buildings are housing thousands to thousands upon thousands of computers. They might be as big as a warehouse, a shopping mall, but some are campuses with multiple buildings on them. And they use a lot of electricity. Think about how much power one computer has, maybe your laptop or your phone, and then think of a very powerful computer. And then think of a shopping mall lined with thousands and thousands of these powerful computers. They use a lot of electricity because these computers are running nonstop 24/7. And then why Northwest Indiana? Like, who cares? Why are they moving in here and disrupting our communities? We're pretty close to Chicago. I'm in Valparaiso right now. That's about a 45-minute um, Nope, that's a lie. It's about an hour and a half drive, hour train ride or so to Chicago. So, if they put in data centers here in this area, they're close enough to Chicago to help serve the massive demand, that Chicago uses. Obviously, Chicago is one of the more major cities, so there is lots and lots and lots of people using lots and lots and lots of technology. Therefore, they need data centers closer to Chicago to help serve this demand. However, Chicago's expensive, land in Chicago is expensive, building permits in Chicago are expensive, and there's just more available land in Indiana. Land is cheaper here, more available. There's a lot fewer building restrictions because we're outside the major city. And then Northwest Indiana is historically an industrial region. I don't know if you've heard of Gary or Michigan City. There's lots of factories and industrial parks in this area. And so there's already access to power grids that kept these running. So they already have access to um, power grids to help keep these running without having to pay to build new ones or as many new ones. So like I said, if you have any further questions, feel free to leave them below, or maybe that sparked you to do some of your own research on some further questions that you might have. So now we're going to look at some of the environmental concerns. As I said, I'm a meteorology student. I care a lot about the environment. I spend a lot of my time looking at the environment and the weather. So this was a big concern of mine. So starting out with just the energy use, like I said, these thousands to even millions of servers are running 24/7 and they are constantly processing data. So as they are running and using energy, they tend to generate a lot of heat. They get really hot. Just think about how hot your computer gets sitting on your lap for an hour. And now imagine thousands and thousands of these computers running constantly at high speeds, processing tons of data. They get really hot, but they need to stay running. So there's a lot of cooling systems within these. And they also use a lot of energy, like air conditioning to keep the buildings cool, but then also like liquid and cooling towers just to keep everything cooled down. That themselves use a lot of energy as well. And as they're rapidly growing, these data centers, um, they're beginning to use a lot more of energy. Um, and then did you know that according to the Hoosier Environmental Council, they predict that data centers could account for 6 to 12% of global electricity by 2030. This is, when I'm recording this, it's April 2026. That's 3.5 years from now, 4 years from now. That's insane. That's insane. That's as much energy and electricity as a small country. It's insane. And then looking a little bit more into air pollution, that's always a big deal when thinking about factories and industrial parks that Northwest Indiana already struggles with. Um, these data centers run on fossil fuels. They have to get their energy and their electricity from somewhere, and they burn coal and gas to get this. And this puts particulate matters and nitrogen oxides into the air, which you are breathing in, harming your lungs, harming your health, and then overall increasing greenhouse gases, warming the planet. All of these come from fossil fuels, and then fossil fuels are not renewable. We will run out one day. So as we are rapidly growing with more data centers, we're using more and more of our limited resources. And then they also have backup generators. So they have to stay running constantly. So they use backup generators that run on diesel, which, if anyone knows anything about maybe big trucks driving, that also puts a lot of harmful emissions into the air. And that's along with the burning of the fossil fuels. So the more data centers we have, the more power plants that are being built to support them alongside of that. And then water usage is a huge aspect of these. I don't know if any of you have seen online, but if you see like an AI video and someone's like, it cost a gallon of water to make this, by the way, this is what they're referring to, is these data centers use millions of gallons of water per day to keep the building and the computers cool. This water helps absorb and remove heat from the buildings and the computers to keep them cool and to keep them running, but it is massive amounts of water that they're using. And they're pumping it right out of Lake Michigan. They're competing with the local water demand and taking away the fresh drinking water that Northwest Indiana depends on. So all of these aspects combined are putting a lot of strain on our local environment. Like I said, there's increased greenhouse gas emissions, burning of fossil fuels, releasing CO2. Obviously, that contributes to climate change, slowly warming the earth. And in any aspect, that's bad, but these data centers are doing it a lot more. And then these power plants, along with the backup generators, are releasing the particulate matters. Those are tiny particles that you breathe in, and then nitrogen oxides, which is also very harmful for human health. So All of these factors combined are putting strain on our environment that Northwest Indiana already struggles with because it's already an industrial area. I don't know if you've heard of Gary and the struggles that the people who live there are dealing with, and the air quality and the health in that area. This is just piling on to that idea. So if you have any other ideas of maybe places we can put these or what we can do to help the environment, leave them down below. And then we're going to look a little bit more into the health effects. So this is a big deal when thinking on the local level. People who are going to be living next to these data centers. So some short-term effects, just as simple as coughing, throat irritation. Those that struggle with asthma will have flare-ups, difficulty breathing, just day-to-day things that people are going to be beginning to struggle with more. And then long-term effects, chronic asthma, it can cause heart disease, lung damage from all of the breathing in of the gases, and then it can actually increase your risk of premature death. If you're dealing with these on your daily basis in your backyard, it will increase your risk of a premature death. And then obviously the most at-risk groups are children and elderly individuals, but this really affects everyone living in that area. Especially people with asthma and respiratory conditions, they already are struggling with breathing, and then you add dirty, um, bad air quality air into the mix. And then a lot of times these data centers are put into low income communities because these people don't have the resources, the money, the power to fight back against this. And so most of the time, the people that are affected by all these health effects are people who have little control over where they live. They don't have the money to get up and move to another city. They can't sell their house because no one's going to buy a house with a data center in the backyard, right? So, a lot of times these people have little say and little control over where they live. So again, looking more at the local communities. These data centers are using millions of gallons of water per day, and that's reducing the water availability for the local people. Taking away access to the clean drinking water, and this affects sanitation and hygiene. People don't have access to clean water to shower, to bathe, to cook with, to drink with. Um, it's literally competing with people in the area. And then it can increase costs for people living in the area as well. It can cause higher utility bills because of all the energy and electricity being used. Maybe worsening the air quality, you need to pay more for filters and such. And then it can also limit access for lower income households as well. And then just looking at the ecosystem in those areas, it's affecting the food systems, it's affecting the wildlife in your backyard, um, messing with the food chain. All of this is disrupting the where you live, the home that you live in. And then it affects long-term environmental health, like I said. And putting greenhouse gases into the air directly over where you live will start to warm eventually. Can you think of any other aspects that your local communities might be struggling with? Leave them down below. So now we're gonna look at some possible solutions. Um, First of all, renewable energy. That's a very big one. Switching from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources like solar and wind, that will take away most of the air pollution that these cause, pumping greenhouse gases into the air. And these data centers use up a lot of electricity. So if you start to power them with clean energy, this can significantly reduce the pollution in that area. And then more efficient cooling, right? This cooling systems are what use millions of gallons of water. So if we can start switch to maybe air-based cooling, or maybe start to use more recycled water, figuring out a more efficient way to cool will reduce the water impact that these data centers are bringing to local areas. Better location planning, right? Don't put them in areas where people are already struggling to have clean access to water. Maybe put them in an area that already has a lot of access to renewable energy, right? Um, and then don't put them in areas where people are already struggling with air pollution, people are already struggling with bad air quality, and then putting these on top of that and furthering that process for these people. And then a couple more government regulations. This can include local, state, federal regulations, just putting limits on how much emissions these companies can put into the air, right? We see this a little bit, but not much, and the impact that it really makes. Um, and just helping pass these laws will be really helpful and kind of saying, hey, you can't put a data center where people are already struggling. You cannot put them in low income areas. And it kind of holds the companies accountable and forces them to consider the public health. And then lastly, community involvement, right? We see this a lot in Northwest Indiana right now. I see signs up in people's yards all the time. People are posting about it. They're holding, um, they're, what's the word? Like they're fighting against it, right? So the more that we voice our concerns about this, the more that we can push for sustainable practices, right? You can put a data center here, but you have to use renewable energy, but you can't use all of our clean drinking water, right? Um, and then this community input can influence how and where data centers are developed, right? And it gives the people who are affected the most a say. So taking into consider the community and having a pushback on not just letting the data centers do whatever they want to the place that you live, right? Do you have any other ideas for solutions? Leave them down below. So discuss with other people in the comment section or message me. Would you support a data center in your community? Why or why not? Thanks.